This video for Sunday, today not a classic mindset video, but a video that is somewhat dangerous. To some extent, it is dangerous for us to turn it, but it is also dangerous for you as a viewer to see it. Due to the presence of content when considering it, perhaps the worldview is slightly altered. That one might perceive certain things in a distinct light and then genuinely act and behave in a different manner in the future. And if you feel like getting a little closer to the truth, if you feel like shaping a new future and not being trapped in the hamster wheel of history over and over again, then stick with it until the end. My name is Hannes.
My name is Benjamin. Welcome from the Middle East. I'm very excited and already curious about what's coming.
In any case, share video now, subscribe to channel, very important, thumbs up. Hannes, let's start. And Benjamin, this week we discussed, among other things, the Dakar Carlson interview and also analyzed Putin's statements to some extent. Putin discusses denazification of Ukraine. It repeatedly comes up with him, encountering massive incomprehension for many people, causing ongoing confusion and concern. Putin simply claimed in the interview, "I cannot verify it, I am just repeating it," that certain gentlemen cooperated with Hitler during the time of the Second World War and then became national heroes in Ukraine, who are still revered today. And this ideology, this must be prevented in and of itself. Additionally, he also mentioned that in Donbass and other regions in Ukraine, individuals have been subjected to repeated persecution by this very group, which he intends to eliminate from these areas. And indeed, there are numerous video evidence, multiple reports and narratives about what has occurred in this Donbass region and other regions in Ukraine. And then also very disturbing, one must clearly say, when one observes, for instance, Zelensky standing adjacent to Troubadour at the Canadian Parliament and receiving standing ovations, an individual who fought alongside the Nazis in opposition to Russia. He is introduced as such and receives standing ovations. This is already a somewhat bewildering and perplexing picture. For instance, it was evident that all media organizations in Europe and the Western world, one could almost argue, were established with funding and financing from the CIA and the United States of America. Even today, for example, there are clear indications of this in the employment contract at Axel Springer. One could already assume a certain proximity to the deep state, just as, of course, when you simply look at reality. I brought the graphic last week, and you can just show it again when you look at 1945, when the French were asked, yes, who won the victory over Nazi Germany, who defeated Nazi Germany, and who was the decisive force for it. The majority of people said it was clearly the Soviet Union. And then in the year 2004, under different circumstances, it was undoubtedly the United States of America. And with that, new truths were created, new realities were created, and the story was, so to speak, also rewritten. And of course, media companies have made this possible. Just as if you look at it, and we have examined this very closely in our Prepare for 24, if you look at what, for example, after the Second World War, knowledge and patents from Germany were emigrated to the USA or were exported, then these are incredible amounts. 110,000 tons of paper on works and patents, for example. It is said that the German patent office was evacuated. The knowledge advantage of more than 100 years was transported from Germany as a loser to the United States of America after the Second World War. For instance, a moon landing and rocket technology can be traced back to the accomplishments of Wernher von Braun, a German with a dubious past who subsequently forged a remarkable career in the United States of America under fresh leadership. And so it went for many former Nazis who in and of themselves emigrated to the USA with new passions, voluntarily and involuntarily, and thus became part of the new world power. And I do not want to initiate a new conspiracy theory or a new caste, but we should certainly adhere to the facts when it comes to this challenging topic. In the same way, one can always ask oneself again and again about the quote that I processed in a video this week, which states that Winston Churchill's unforgivable crime of Germany before the Second World War was the attempt to detach its economic power from the world trade system and create its own exchange system in which the world finance could not earn. And we saw that with Gaddafi. What we saw with Saddam Hussein, we have seen this very often. And I'm already wondering, what was Putin's intention? What was Putin's intention that maybe the global financial system wouldn't have approved of? Why new measures, new sanctions, new methods needed to start the whole thing a bit? The French newspaper El Figaro wrote an article about the third capitulation of Germany, which occurred during the signing of the Maastricht Treaties in 1990 and 1992. The Maastricht Treaties govern the euro, the Stability and Growth Pact, more or less the euro. Can one say that Germany has become a member of this union, particularly not the European Union, but rather the transfer union? That is why El Figaro clearly wrote about Germany's third capitulation. Now, totaling up all of these facts, what am I arriving at? We have this Vladimir Putin who talks nonsense about a denazification process in Ukraine. We have the situation after WO2, which has shaped the media landscape in the world, in the Western world. The media landscape of the Western world is definitely the biggest weapon. This must be stated clearly, as Vladimir Putin has also stated. And then we simply have this patent, this knowledge advantage, this technological progress that has emigrated from Germany to the USA. And on the third page, the endeavor throughout the centuries to preserve Germany as a highly formidable economic power, small can almost be regarded as a transfer union in the present day within the European Union. And at the end of the day, it's relatively irrelevant whether one now says that the whole thing that Vladimir Putin is saying is a right-wing conspiracy theory, an attempt to destabilize Europe, or whether one wants to believe the whole thing. Ultimately, that is relatively insignificant because it is crucial for us to understand one thing. We should simply inquire whether this ideology has ever been swapped, whether this detestable ideology from before the Second World War has ever been exchanged, in which individuals perceive themselves as elitist herd people and view others as repugnant eaters. And one must clearly ask oneself, do we still have the same view of humanity in large parts of the political caste today or not? I don't want to give an answer to that, but everyone can clearly ask themselves that. When we then hear about the fight against the right, about the game on the battlefield where people lose their real lives, about the financing of weapons in all countries, about the war economy, how Europe is being heavily armed by Germany, yes, from the power game we witness in every corner and end, did we exchange the ideology that we see then? Has the ideology truly been defeated, or have only the bases been swapped? Have only new labels been printed to make it seem like a useless gesture to honor human dignity? The truth is different in my eyes. The truth is clear to me. We live in times of bread and games, and currently we have more games. We are currently experiencing a lot of players being demonstrated in the arenas, on the battlefields, and of course in our economic system. And Benjamin, we had a fantastic live event in January this year. And at the end of the live event, one thing came to our minds spontaneously. We had individuals there from diverse backgrounds, various religions, and highly distinct economic approaches. And in the process, we observed that perhaps our grandfathers had a different narrative, that perhaps our grandfathers had a different perspective on things, and perhaps our grandfathers never had the opportunity for us to form a friendship together. Today, Benjamin and I and our community Bayern West have the opportunity to forge this friendship, to leave behind these rifts of the past, because all of us who are here today, who live here in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and all over the world, are neither victims nor perpetrators of a history. And I also don't let myself be labeled as a victim or perpetrator of a story that was told to us and thus be directed in a certain direction. We ourselves are the ones who must decide. We ourselves are the ones who must have the courage to decide now which direction we want to go. Whether we repeat the same mistakes as our grandfathers, permitting ourselves to be divided once more in order to comply with the elitist game of power and thus repeat the same mistakes once again. I clearly say no, not this time. It doesn't make sense to ramp up a war economy in Europe for me. It makes no sense to me to produce weapons that kill people no matter on which battlefields of the world. It doesn't make sense to me to cater to an elitist caste that wants to bring their own elitist desires onto the track in a way that is undignified for humans. And that's why we are shaping our future together here and now. Let's go boldly and resolutely into a future that is ours and no longer needs to be dictated by an elitist caste with heart and mind.
Hannes, no matter. Rob, fight against Russia, fight against Ukraine, fight against Hamas, fight against Israel, fight against the right. What do I know? At the end of the day, it's about a special player fighting for the US dollar. And Hannes, yes, if our grandfathers had known that even then the fight for global power was ongoing, about establishing the world's top currency, maybe they would have been wiser. But one thing is already clear, people. Right now, we have the opportunity as a community, as Investinbest, invest in a world where we can exchange information with each other and clearly demonstrate time and time again that it is particularly important for someone who is very active, so to speak, on battlefields around the world, more indirectly than directly, of course, but it is precisely this power, this superpower, that simply wants to retain one thing, and that is the unlimited ability to create money out of thin air and impose this money on the whole world. And therefore, one must, of course, distract, and that means vida et impera, divide and rule, create an arena full of bread and games, so that no one looks at our fingers and sees what we are doing so nicely in the background. Hannes, it is truly indescribable what is happening in the world, but I am confident that we will find the solution here, and that as a united, how should I say, human family, this time we will not be deceived anymore.
One thing to take away from this video: you are neither a perpetrator nor a victim, you are a creator. We are shapers of our time, and we just don't want, and we have to take responsibility that we are allowed to build a world together. And in doing so, we should not forget you are guided, protected, loved, and blessed on all paths of your life. Shape it, walk this path determined and bravely, be the one who does it.